It's funny how silence sounds different when the world turns against you. I used to thrive on noise, the buzz of trading floors, the clinking of champagne glasses, the echo of my name at product launches. Now, all I could hear was the soft hum of the city outside my penthouse windows and the dull ache of betrayal roaring in my chest. Vanessa was gone. $3 million. That's what trust cost me. I had built an empire from code and sleepless nights, apps that changed industries, investments that doubled in days. They called me a prodigy, a disruptor, a king of modern tech. But in the end, I was just another man who handed his heart and bank account to the wrong woman. The morning it happened, my phone lit up with headlines. Another rich fool falls for a pretty face. Vanessa Coleman vanishes with $3 million gift from billionaire Ethan Drake. Was it love or just a long con? They didn't know the truth, of course. No one did. They didn't see the nights I stayed up planning our future together, the quiet moments when she held my hand and told me she believed in me. They didn't hear her say, "Ethan, you make me feel like I finally matter." I believed her. God, I wanted it to be real. She said she needed the money for a private investment. I wired it without blinking, but she didn't invest. She disappeared. No calls, no messages, just an Instagram post on a yacht, her smile wide, champagne in hand, tagged in Mykonos. Caption: some risks are worth taking. Vanessa took more than my money. She took my certainty, my rhythm, my sense of judgment. She took the part of me that still believed love could exist without a contract. Now I sit in the silence, alone. People say a billionaire should have known better. Maybe they're right. But what they don't understand is that the richest man in the room is often the one who's hungriest for something real. And real? I hadn't seen that in a long, long time. Not until I met her. The morning after Vanessa disappeared with my money, and with whatever was left of my pride, I woke up to a city that suddenly felt sharper, colder. Even the light filtering through my windows looked artificial, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I couldn't stay in the penthouse. Too many memories, too many people knowing my name. So I threw on a hoodie, the kind that cost more than most rent but made me look just poor enough to disappear, and I walked. No destination, no plan. Just streets that didn't ask questions. That's when I saw the cafe. It was tucked between a shuttered bookstore and a laundromat with a flickering sign. The kind of place that didn't show up on any map. The kind of place where no one would recognize a billionaire who once smiled from Forbes covers. I stepped inside. The warmth hit me like a blanket. Coffee beans, cinnamon, cheap vanilla candles trying their best. It was quiet, worn, real, and for the first time in days I exhaled. Then came the crash. A sharp gasp, a splash of heat, a paper cup tumbling to the floor. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I looked down. My gray sweatshirt now wore a mural of dark roast. And standing in front of me, cheeks flushed and eyes wide, was the waitress. She looked like chaos in motion. Stray hairs falling from her bun, ink smudged on her wrist, apron slightly off-center. Her name tag read Mia. Her presence read apology. "I just brewed that. I didn't mean to. Are you burned? I can get you ice, or a free drink, or a new shirt, or—" "It's fine," I said, more surprised by her panic than the coffee. She stared at me for a second longer than most strangers do, not with recognition, with curiosity, as if trying to decide whether to believe me. Finally, she smiled, awkward and crooked, but real. "Well, congrats. You've officially survived our worst coffee spill of the month." Something about her disarmed me. No questions, no pretense, no idea who I was. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled back. That moment, coffee-stained and unplanned, was the first time in a long while I didn't feel like a headline. I felt human. And I had no idea yet how much I needed that girl. I came back the next morning, not because the coffee was good, it wasn't. It was burnt again, thick and bitter, the kind of brew that clung to the roof of your mouth like regret. But I wasn't there for the coffee, I was there for her. Mia didn't recognize me. Not on day one, not on day two, not even on day three when she finally asked for my name and scribbled down Ethan on a napkin. like I was just another regular trying to avoid eye contact in reality. That alone made her different. She didn't look at me with the usual mix of curiosity and calculation. There were no lingering glances at my shoes to guess the brand. No subtle questions about what I did for a living. She never once asked why a man in a cashmere hoodie and designer watch was hiding out in a crumbling cafe that smelled like burned toast and second chances. Instead, she brought me refills before I asked, teased me when I grimaced at the taste, talked to me like we were equals, no filter, no facade, and that terrified me. On the fourth morning, I must have looked particularly lost. I had barely slept. Vanessa was trending again, some new leak, a video. She was at a private club with a venture capitalist who used to beg me for meetings. My name was in the headlines again, twisted into punchlines and pity. I must have been staring at the wall too long, because Mia slid into the booth across from me without asking. No tray, no apron. Just her and that curious gaze that felt like it peeled layers off my chest. "You okay?" she asked. I shrugged. "Just tired." She tilted her head. "You don't look tired. You look haunted." I laughed under my breath. "That obvious?" She leaned forward, elbows on the table, her voice soft but sure. "The look on your face, it's the look of someone afraid of losing." I froze. She didn't blink, didn't pull back. She just said it, blunt and bare and honest, like she didn't care if it made me uncomfortable. "Afraid of losing what?" I asked, barely above a whisper. "Whatever made you feel whole in the first place." I should have felt exposed. Instead, I felt seen. I met her eyes then, really looked, and something in me cracked open. Mia didn't know who I was, but somehow she already knew what I was, shattered glass in a tailored shell. And in that moment, I realized something. She wasn't afraid of me. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to be afraid of myself around her either. It became routine. Not because I liked the coffee, it still tasted like scorched earth, but because of the way she looked at me. Not through me, not at my name, but into me. Every morning around 8, I'd walk through the peeling blue door of that cafe like a man stepping out of a dream and into something tangible. Mia would be there, hair tied back, apron dusted with flour and coffee grounds, humming some off-key tune she never quite finished. And I'd sit, always in the same booth, by the window, pretending to read the news on my phone while secretly watching her exist. She spoke to me in a language I hadn't heard in years. Truth, unpolished and simple. "Don't trust our muffins," she said one morning, setting a plate in front of me. "We got them delivered late. They taste like betrayal." I nearly choked laughing. No one in my world talked like that. In my world, words were measured, coded, strategic. Conversations were transactions. Every compliment had an agenda. Every smile was sharpened by ambition. But Mia, she said what she meant. She asked how I was and waited for an actual answer. She made fun of my hoodie when I wore the same one 3 days in a row. She remembered how I took my coffee, even if she still burned it. And slowly, something inside me began to shift. I started looking forward to mornings, to sitting across from someone who didn't expect brilliance, or power, or answers. Someone who let the silence between sips of coffee just be. Once, after we talked about our favorite childhood snacks, hers was something called chocolate cereal dust she used to eat straight from the bag, she looked at me and said, "You're different when you smile. Less haunted." I froze. Again. It was the second time she'd used that word, haunted, and the second time it felt more accurate than anything in the tabloids. "You always speak like that?" I asked. "Like what?" "Like you're not afraid to see people for what they are." She shrugged, clearing my empty cup. "Why would I be? Most people are too busy hiding to notice." I watched her walk away, a little stunned. She had no idea who I was, no clue how many zeros were in my bank account. And yet she saw more of me in 3 days than Vanessa had in 3 years. So yeah, I kept coming back. Not for the coffee, not for the muffins, but because in a world full of noise, Mia's honesty was the first thing that felt real. It took me longer than I care to admit to ask her about her life. Not because I didn't want to know, because I was scared I would. There was something about the way Mia carried herself, this lightness like she danced over the weight of the world. You'd never guess she had anything to carry at all. But truth has a way of slipping through the cracks, and one day it slipped through hers. It started with a casual joke I made about how often she worked. "Do you ever sleep?" I asked, sipping on another one of her charred brews. She gave a tired laugh. "Between this job, the evening shift at the grocery store, and taking care of my mom, I collect hours like they're lottery tickets." I blinked. "Wait, you have two jobs?" "Sometimes three if my neighbor calls out from the diner." She leaned against the counter, the light from the window catching the purple tint under her eyes. "I don't really have a choice." I felt something tighten in my chest. I suddenly felt stupid for every night I'd wasted refreshing luxury watch auctions or arguing over steak temperatures at five-star restaurants. "So, what about school?" I asked carefully. She looked down for a second, then back up with that same half-smile she wore when something hurt. "Dropped out sophomore year. Full scholarship at first, but then mom got sick. Hospital bills stacked, rent piled up, and textbooks didn't pay for groceries." "And your dad?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Long gone," she said simply. She didn't say it with bitterness, just resignation, like she'd learned not to wait for people to return. She wiped a table with a rag that had seen better days and added, "We live in a one-room apartment above a laundromat. Gets loud on Fridays, smells like dryer sheets and burnt rice. But hey, it's got a roof and four stubborn walls." The way she said it, not as a complaint, but as a strange kind of victory, made me sit back and reevaluate everything I thought was hard. Still, the most surprising part wasn't how much she endured. It was how limitless her spirit remained. In the middle of explaining how she made dinner with three ingredients and no microwave, she said something that floored me. "I still want to be a children's book author one day. I write stories at night. Just dumb stuff. Pirate cats and sky whales. Keeps my brain from forgetting how to dream." My throat tightened, because in all my wealth, all my calculated risks and billion-dollar innovations, I had forgotten how to dream. But Mia? She dreamed in full color, while washing dishes, folding uniforms, and holding her mother's hand through migraines. And I realized then, she didn't live a small life. She lived a loud one, in imagination, in resilience, in hope. And for the first time in years, I wanted to be part of someone else's world more than I wanted to build my own. I hadn't heard from Vanessa since the betrayal. Not a single call, not a text, not even a vague statement through her PR team. She had vanished into yachts, private clubs, in the arms of another man. Until suddenly she didn't. It happened on a Tuesday. I had just left the cafe. Mia had drawn a smiley face in the foam of my terrible cappuccino, and for once, I didn't mind that it tasted like burnt cardboard. We'd sat longer than usual. She told me about a story she was writing, something about a dragon who collected crayons instead of treasure. It made me laugh harder than I had in months. I was still smiling when I got into my car. That's when I saw her, Vanessa, leaning against the wall near the parking garage, dressed in cream cashmere and sunglasses that couldn't hide the storm in her eyes. "Ethan," she said. I froze. My instincts screamed at me to keep walking. But curiosity, that cursed fragile thread, held me in place. She stepped forward. No cameras. No entourage. Just her. The same lips that once whispered I was her. Everything now trembled with uncertainty. "I was stupid," she said. "I panicked. I didn't know what to do after us." I stared at her, silent. "I thought the money would fill the void," she continued. "But it didn't. None of it did." Tears welled in her eyes. She reached for my hand. "I still love you, Ethan." For a moment, the ground under me tilted. I remembered the version of Vanessa I used to believe in. The one who laughed at my awful cooking, who ran barefoot through my hallway at midnight, who once told me I was the only person who ever made her feel safe. But that version was a ghost. And yet, ghosts have a way of haunting us long after they've stopped being real. I didn't say anything. I just stepped back. But something had already shifted inside me. That night I met Mia like usual. She handed me my coffee, asked about my day. I smiled. Too forced, too late. She noticed. I tried to pretend it was nothing. But with Mia, Pretending never worked. She didn't push. She just faded, gave me space I hadn't asked for. Her words were still kind, but something behind her eyes dimmed, like she could already feel the distance I hadn't meant to create. And the worst part? I let it happen, because I didn't know how to face the confusion twisting inside me. Vanessa had once broken me. Mia had started putting the pieces back together. And now I was too afraid to admit that I didn't trust myself not to break everything again. I didn't see Mia the next day, or the one after that. On the third morning, I showed up to the cafe earlier than usual. Her coworker, a tired woman named Jessa, who always smelled like cinnamon gum, was behind the counter. "She's not on the schedule this week," she said, barely looking up. "Told the boss she needed time." My stomach dropped. I sat in our booth anyway, nursing a lukewarm coffee and pretending not to notice how empty the place felt, without her voice echoing between orders. Every time the door chimed, I looked up, and every time it wasn't her. I didn't blame her. Not really. I had gone quiet after seeing Vanessa. I'd let a familiar shadow sneak between us. I didn't explain. I didn't reassure her. And Mia wasn't the kind of girl to beg for clarity. She had spent too many years surviving to waste energy on people who didn't show up. That night, when I returned to my car, something slipped off the dashboard. A small folded piece of paper tucked beneath the wiper. My name, her handwriting. I opened it with hands that felt too big, too clumsy for what I already sensed was delicate. "Ethan, I hope she doesn't break you again. But if she does, I hope you remember how it felt to heal. Sometimes life gives you the wrong person, so you can recognize the right one. Don't let her rewrite the story." Mia. I must have read it 10 times. Each time it hit harder. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't bitter. It was Mia in her purest form, honest, unpolished, and quietly brave. I sat in the driver's seat long after the city went dark, holding that note like it might vanish if I blinked too hard. For days, I carried her words in my pocket, slept with them on my nightstand, heard them every time I stood in a room full of people and still felt alone. Don't let her rewrite the story. That line dug deep. Because maybe that's exactly what I was doing. Letting an old chapter, one filled with pain and pretense, overwrite a new one that had just started to bloom. And Mia, she wasn't a footnote. She was the truth I hadn't had the courage to write into my life. Yet, guilt has a strange sound. It's not loud. It's quiet. A dull hum that follows you into boardrooms and bedrooms, that settles in your throat when you speak and makes everything you say feel half honest. That was the noise I lived in after Mia disappeared. And then one morning I found her outside the cafe, waiting for me this time. No apron, no tray, just jeans, a gray hoodie, and a flash drive dangling between her fingers like a weapon forged from truth. "I found something," she said. "You need to see it." I didn't ask how. I didn't ask when. I just unlocked my car and drove. She sat beside me in silence, her knees pulled to her chest, that same look in her eyes she'd had the day she spilled coffee on me, like she was about to ruin everything, and do it anyway. Back at my penthouse, I plugged the drive in. The screen flickered, a hotel security feed loaded. The timestamp, the night Vanessa claimed she was grieving, the night she called me, breathless and broken, telling me she still loved me. The footage, Vanessa, arm in arm with a man in a silver suit, laughing, kissing, taking the elevator to a private floor. I stared, silent, not shocked, not even angry, just empty. Mia didn't say anything. She didn't gloat. She didn't whisper, "I told you so." She just stood by the window, arms crossed, like she was giving me space to detonate. Eventually, I turned to her. "How did you find this?" She shrugged. "I knew someone who worked the desk. Told her you were trying to close a lawsuit. That woman has enough enemies, Ethan. You just never looked hard enough." She was right. I didn't want to see Vanessa clearly, because if I did, I'd have to admit that I fell for a mask, that I ignored every warning because love, when it's built on fantasy, can be blinding. I took a breath. "Thank you." She looked at me, her voice soft but firm. "Don't thank me yet. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because you deserve to know what's real." I nodded slowly. "And you? Are you real?" She smiled. Real enough to walk away if you keep choosing ghosts. And with that, she left. The door clicked shut, and I sat there, watching Vanessa's betrayal replay on a loop, my reflection flickering back at me in the screen's dark glass. This time, I wasn't just betrayed by someone else. I had betrayed myself by not seeing the one person who never lied to me. And if I didn't act fast, I was going to lose her for good. I was never one for spectacle. I built my empire with precision, not performance. But when someone burns you in front of the world, there's a moment when silence stops being noble and starts looking like guilt. So I broke the silence, loudly. I called a press conference in the heart of downtown. Flashbulbs popped like gunfire as I stepped onto the stage. Investors, reporters, influencers, every last one of them hungry for blood or redemption. Maybe both. I didn't bring lawyers, didn't pass out carefully worded statements. I just stood there, a microphone, and a truth I should have faced months ago. I was scammed, I began, by someone I once trusted, someone I thought I loved. The murmurs started immediately. Phones lifted, tweets fired. Vanessa Coleman manipulated me, lied to me, took millions under false pretenses, and while I blamed myself, she was out celebrating in private suites with another man. A slideshow flickered on the screen behind me. Security stills from the hotel, timestamps, financial records. Unforgiving. Undeniable. I could feel the room shift. Sympathy replacing cynicism. Gasps replacing scoffs. But even as they rallied to my side, even as my name started trending for the right reasons for once, I felt nothing. Because she wasn't there. Mia, the one person who saw me as more than a scandal, more than a paycheck or a genius or a fool. The girl who wore coffee stains and courage like armor. The one who had given me the truth, even when I didn't deserve it. I checked my phone after the press conference. No messages, no missed calls. Just a quiet screen. Reporters flooded me with questions. Do you plan to press charges? How much did you lose? Is this your comeback? But all I could think was, she's not here. She should be here. Because this win, if you could even call it that, wasn't whole without her. Later that night, headlines painted me a hero. Ethan Drake shuts down Gold Digger, Live on Air. From victim to victor. But they didn't know. They didn't see what I saw when I stood at that podium. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't even thinking about Vanessa. I was thinking about a quiet girl in a hoodie who once told me that I looked like someone afraid of losing, and she was right, because now all I had was proof, and no one to show it to. Applause fades faster than silence. That's the first thing I learned after the press conference. People cheered me for exposing Vanessa. Investors called to express their respect. Old friends I hadn't heard from in years sent half-hearted texts like, "Proud of you, man," but none of it mattered. Not when I walked into a room and still felt completely alone. I stood at a rooftop gala 2 nights later, surrounded by polished suits and laughter that didn't quite reach anyone's eyes. Champagne flowed, the skyline glittered, and yet I couldn't stop staring at the floor. I'd achieved everything. Fortune, status, headlines that bowed to my name. But when the crowd cleared, when the music dimmed and the flashbulbs cooled, I realized something. I had built nothing real. I had designed skyscrapers of success and furnished them with illusions. My relationships were curated, my decisions rehearsed. My home, spacious and cold, felt like a showroom, not a sanctuary. And then I thought of her, Mia, that tiny cafe with the chipped counter and flickering lights, her fingers brushing mine as she handed over a coffee cup too hot to hold, her voice rough from exhaustion but sincere, her laughter unscripted, her words too honest to forget. The look on your face, it's the look of someone afraid of losing. I remember how her hands shook that first day, the splash of burnt coffee across my hoodie, the wide-eyed panic followed by a crooked smile that disarmed me before I even knew her name. That coffee, that moment, it was the realest thing I'd felt in years. Not the deals, not the standing ovations, not Vanessa's rehearsed affection, just one girl with nothing to gain and everything to give. I stood at the edge of the party, city lights reflecting in the glass around me. I should have felt powerful, untouchable. Instead, I felt like a man who had finally climbed the mountain, only to realize he'd left his heart at the bottom. Ego had gotten me here, but ego couldn't hold my hand, couldn't make burnt coffee taste sweet, couldn't whisper truths when I was too proud to speak them. That night, as the crowd laughed behind me, I stood still, and I finally admitted to myself, everything I ever built was hollow, except for the part of me that still remembered her name. It had been days since I last saw her, days filled with noise, cameras, boardrooms, and praise I couldn't feel. But her absence was the only thing that echoed. I checked the cafe every morning, waited in that booth like a ghost, haunting the only place that had ever felt real. Her name was never on the schedule again. I asked Jessa once, but all she said was, "She's got other things to take care of now." That wasn't good enough, not for me, not after everything she'd given. So I started walking, block by block, street by street, no driver, no umbrella. Just a man in a coat too expensive for puddles and shoes that soaked faster than regret. And then I saw her. It was pouring. Fat, merciless drops that blurred the streetlights and soaked through fabric in seconds. She was crossing an intersection slowly, a stack of books hugged to her chest under a plastic bag that barely helped. Her hair clung to her face, and her hoodie sagged with rain. But her eyes, those eyes that once saw through every defense I had, were locked forward, focused, distant. I called out, "Mia!" She turned, startled. For a second, she just stood there. The rain ran down her cheeks like tears that didn't need permission. I stepped closer, breath catching in my throat. "What are you doing out here?" I asked. She looked down at her books, then back at me. "Going home." "You're drenched." "I've been wetter." I let the silence stretch between us. I could see she was trying to stay composed, but I saw it. The faint shake in her hands, the weight she carried in her arms, in her heart. "Why didn't you come back?" I asked, softer this time. Mia shifted her bag on her shoulder, eyes never leaving mine. "Because I gave you everything I had, and I didn't want to watch you give it away to someone who already proved she didn't care." I stepped closer. "She's gone." She nodded once. "I know. I saw I swallowed hard. You were right about everything." "You don't owe me that," she said, her voice low but steady. "You don't owe me anything." The rain fell harder. People passed around us with umbrellas and rush, like we were just two shadows on the edge of their lives. But to me, this moment was louder than any stage, more important than any deal. I shook my head. "No, Mia, I do. You gave me the truth when I couldn't see straight. You saw me when all I could do was hide. You reminded me of the man I wanted to be." She looked away, blinking fast. "I didn't do anything special." I took the wet books gently from her arms and held them close, like they were something sacred. Then I looked at her the way I should have from the very beginning. "You did everything." And this time, she didn't walk away. We didn't speak as we walked. The rain had calmed to a steady drizzle, leaving behind slick sidewalks and the quiet hum of a city that never truly slept. Mia's apartment was only a few blocks away, above a corner store with a broken neon sign that buzzed like a warning. I offered to call a car, but she shook her head. "I'm used to walking," she said. Still, she didn't stop me from walking beside her. At the door, she hesitated, hand on the rusted knob, books tucked under her arm again. "You really don't have to follow me up," she said, her voice softer now. "I know," I replied, "but I didn't come this far just to say goodbye in the rain." She didn't argue. The apartment was small, cramped really. One room, faded wallpaper, the faint smell of instant noodles and worn-out hope. A small bed sat in the corner, next to a shelf filled with battered books and hand-drawn illustrations, dragons, mermaids, cities in the clouds. Her imagination was everywhere. She made tea with a shaky kettle while I sat at the edge of a second-hand sofa that sank in the middle. I looked at her, really looked, and finally said what had been building inside me for weeks. "I thought Vanessa was it," I began. "I thought love meant glitter and attention, and being seen next to someone beautiful. But you—" Mia looked up from the mug she was holding. "You didn't just see me, Mia. You found me. When I was buried under ego and damage and shame, you dug through all of it just to ask how I like my coffee. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. You didn't want anything from me. Not my money, not my name. You just showed up. You were honest, even when it hurt. You made me laugh when I forgot how. And you reminded me that love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. It comes in burnt coffee and hand-drawn dragons. Her lips parted, but no words came out. So I said the truth, the one that scared me the most. I should be thanking you, because you're the first person who gave me back me. She turned away then, not to hide, just to breathe. Her fingers tightened around the mug, shoulders rising slightly as if trying to contain something swelling inside her. Mia? She didn't look back, but her voice when it came was barely a whisper. I don't know what to do with those words. You don't have to do anything, I said. Just know they're yours. And in that quiet moment, in that tiny apartment soaked in dreams and survival, I saw her heart racing through the stillness. Not from fear, but because she'd finally been seen too. I didn't plan some grand gesture. No limousines, no rooftop dinners under curated stars. She'd had enough people try to impress her with shiny things, only to leave her empty-handed. I didn't want to impress Mia. I wanted to know her. So when I called and asked if she was free Friday night, she laughed and said, only if we're not going to a place that serves food on slate instead of plates. Deal, I said. Wear something warm. The old cinema was only 3 blocks from her apartment. I'd passed it a dozen times without ever noticing it. Its faded marquee missing letters, a cracked poster frame holding up a sun-bleached action film from 2 decades ago. But to Mia, it was magic. Mom used to take me here when I was little, she said as we approached. They never updated the seats, and the popcorn machine squeaks. But the screen flickers like it's alive. I love it. That was the thing about Mia. She saw beauty in broken things. Maybe because she'd been one. Inside, the place smelled like butter and history. The ticket guy looked like he hadn't moved in years. The woman at concessions gave Mia a knowing smile and handed her a striped paper bag without asking. She comes here a lot, the woman said to me. I can see why, I smiled. We watched a black and white film neither of us had heard of, something with too much dialogue and soft jazz playing over every scene. We sat in the back, sharing popcorn, our shoulders brushing every now and then. And somewhere between the second act and the credits, I turned to look at her. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, a tiny smile on her lips, and for the first time, I saw her relax completely. Not just safe, but cherished. There was no mask on her face, no tension in her jaw, no guarded walls between us. Just Mia, raw and real and absolutely radiant in the flickering light. Afterward, we walked back slowly. She kicked a rock ahead of her, like a child, hands tucked into her coat. Thanks for not trying to impress me, she said suddenly. I wasn't trying, I replied. I just wanted to see you somewhere you already felt whole. She stopped walking, looked up at me with a softness I wasn't ready for. Well, she said, you did. And then as snow began to fall, quiet, unannounced, she reached out and laced her fingers through mine. No fanfare, no speeches, just warmth. And the feeling that maybe this was what real love looked like when it didn't need to prove itself. It only took one photo, a grainy, poorly lit shot of Mia and me leaving the old cinema, hands clasped, her head tilted back in laughter. Mine turned toward her like the rest of the world didn't matter. Because in that moment, it didn't. But to the press, it was gold. By morning, headlines had swallowed our piece whole. From billionaire to barista, who is Ethan Drake's new flame? Cafe girl catches a CEO, accident or ambition? Waitress to Wall Street, real love or smart play? They didn't even try to get her name right at first, just labeled her the broke girl in the hoodie, as if that alone disqualified her from being near me. I'd seen the media twist stories before. I'd lived through it with Vanessa, but this was different. This was personal. They weren't just questioning her, they were dismantling her. Every tweet, every comment, every over-filtered photo scraped from a tagged Instagram post from years ago painted her like a punchline. Mia didn't say much the first day. She just scrolled through the noise silently, her jaw clenched, her eyes unreadable. The second day, she didn't pick up when I called. The third, I went to her apartment. She opened the door slowly, like even that required too much strength. "I'm sorry," I said. She shook her head. "Don't apologize for who you are. But they're coming after you because of me." She looked at me for a long moment, then said the words I'd feared. "Your world doesn't belong to me, Ethan." "Me? No, listen," she said, voice shaking now. "You live in a place where people expect to be dazzled. I can't dazzle anyone. I don't wear designer shoes or go to silent art auctions. I don't know how to play that game." "You don't have to. But they think I do, and they'll never let me forget that I don't." Her voice cracked on that last word, and I saw it. Fear. Not of me, but of being swallowed whole by a world she never asked to be part of. I stepped toward her. "I don't care what they say." "But I do," she whispered, "because when they look at me like I'm not enough, part of me starts to believe it." That broke something in me, because this woman who survived burnt coffee, late rent, and 1,000 sleepless nights was now questioning her worth because of my spotlight. And for the first time since I met her, she looked like she was already walking away, even while standing right in front of me. They wanted a tech update, a simple Q&A on a new project my company was launching. Another app designed to revolutionize something already saturated. The event was streamed live, cameras everywhere, reporters waiting to slice quotes into headlines. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. Mia had gone silent again. No texts, no calls, no paper notes under my windshield like before. Just silence. And I couldn't take it anymore. Halfway through the broadcast, as the moderator asked about investor confidence, I did something no one expected. Not my team, not my PR handlers, not even myself. I put the microphone to my lips, looked directly into the camera and said, "I know we're here to talk about innovation and growth, but I need to say something else first." The room shifted, eyes locked in, phones lifted. "I may have built something valuable with my hands," I said, "but I didn't realize how empty my life had become until I met someone who saw me without any of the noise." I could see the moderator blinking in panic. My name was trending on the side screens already. "I met a girl," I continued, "not in a boardroom or a gala, but in a rundown cafe where the coffee's always burned and the truth tastes better than anything I've had in years." She wasn't impressed by my name. She didn't care about the cars or the articles or the suits. She just asked if I was okay, and meant it. I took a breath. My chest tightened. The press has picked her apart because she doesn't fit into the box they built for me. They've called her a broke waitress. But let me tell you something. I leaned forward. She may not have money, but she has strength, honesty, fire, and a heart that made me want to become a man worthy of her. The silence was deafening. "So say what you want about me," I said. "Spin your stories. But know this, I may have wealth, but my life is empty without her heart." The live feed ended seconds later, cut off by nervous producers. But it didn't matter. By nightfall, Drurin, his heart not, hers trended worldwide. People posted burned coffee cups with captions like, "Get you a Mia." Even tabloids ran headlines they never thought they'd print. "Billionaire declares love for waitress. Internet falls in love back." But all I cared about was the one person who hadn't said a word. I stared at my phone, hoping she saw it. Not for attention, but to remind her that I wasn't hiding her anymore. Not from the press, not from the world, and not from myself. I didn't sleep after the broadcast. The world was loud, notifications, mentions, headlines trying to decide if I was a romantic or a fool. I turned off my phone. I didn't care what they thought. Not anymore. The only voice I wanted to hear was hers. But the hours passed. No knock, no call. Nothing but the low hum of the city outside my window and the echo of her absence in every corner of my home. Still, I waited. Not because I expected her to come, but because a part of me needed her to know that the door, my door, was open. Always. So I left the lights on, and I found something I hadn't touched in years. A drawing, faded, wrinkled, a sun with a crooked smile, a house with a chimney that leaned left, two stick figures under a tree, one taller than the other. On the back, in shaky, childish handwriting, "True love arrives quietly." It was mine. a drawing I made when I was 8. I'd completely forgotten about it until Mia found it weeks ago, tucked in an old notebook I kept from childhood. She laughed when she saw it, teased me for the uneven roof, then held it like it was worth something. She had added her own note in the corner, in tiny print. Not all quiet things go unnoticed. Now I held it in my hands like it was a blueprint for something I had lost and was finally ready to rebuild. And then, the knock. I froze. A soft, uncertain rhythm. I opened the door. There she was, dripping from the rain, hood down, hair clinging to her cheeks. Her eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying or thinking too hard. Maybe both. She looked like a girl who had run out of words but came anyway. I didn't say anything. I just held up the drawing. Her breath caught. She looked at it, then at me. "I kept it," I said, "because you reminded me it mattered." She stepped inside without a word, eyes fixed on the sketch between us. "I meant what I said," I whispered. "About everything." She nodded slowly, eyes shimmering. "You didn't have to say it to the world," she murmured. "I didn't say it for the world." I took her hand, cold, trembling, and placed it over my heart. "I said it for you." She looked up at me then, and something broke free in her expression. And just like that, the silence between us wasn't emptiness anymore. It was love, finally undeniably present, and for the first time, it didn't arrive with a bang. It arrived quietly, just like she said it would. We didn't go back to the way things were, because that version of us, of me, didn't exist anymore. After the storm of cameras and clickbait settled, after the internet found something new to obsess over, we sat in the quiet and asked, what now? Mia could have asked for anything. A new home, a sabbatical, a chance to escape the noise. But instead she asked for this. "Can we build something that lasts?" She said one night, legs tucked under her on my couch, her fingers wrapped around a mug of too hot tea. "Not just for us, for people like me, kids who fall through the cracks, who don't get noticed, who don't get chosen." I looked at her for a long time, and then I nodded. That's how the Second Chance Fund was born. We announced it quietly. No press tour, no grand unveiling, just a single post that read, "Not every genius has a resume. Not every fighter has a trophy. Some people just need one hand reaching back. So we're building a bridge for those who were never seen. This is for them." EMD. The initials stood for both of us. Ethan Michael Drake, Mia Delaney. Together we built more than a fund. We built a future. Scholarships for students who dropped out to care for their families. Grants for young women aging out of foster care. Writing programs for kids who couldn't afford notebooks but had entire galaxies in their heads. Mia ran most of it. Interviewed applicants herself. Wrote handwritten letters to every recipient. She refused to let the process be automated or cold. "If we're giving them a second chance," she'd say, "we can't treat them like numbers." I watched her bloom, not into someone new, but into someone who finally had space to be who she already was. Her voice grew stronger. Her shoulders stood taller. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading. And I followed her lead. The more we gave, the more I felt like I was finally building something that mattered. Not apps, not companies. Connection. The kind that doesn't vanish when the market dips. The kind that doesn't need a logo. The kind that lasts. Together we gave hope where no one had bothered to look. And in doing so I realized, I didn't just find love in Mia, I found purpose. It was late. One of those nights where the city hums like it's breathing just beneath your skin. Mia and I were sitting on the rooftop of our building, our quiet little ritual. No speeches, no distractions, just a blanket, 2 mugs of tea, and a view of the skyline we were slowly learning not to fear. She was lying back, head resting on my lap, her hair still damp from the shower, her skin glowing in the amber streetlights below. She was tracing constellations in the sky with her finger, telling me the stories she'd made up for each one. "That one," she said, pointing, "is the star of second chances. If you squint, it looks like someone reaching for something just out of frame. I like to think they get it, eventually." I smiled. "I think they do too." She turned her head slightly, looking up at me. Her eyes were tired but content, safe, trusting. and something about the quiet between us made my chest ache in a way I hadn't felt before. Not pain, not fear, something deeper. Mia, I said softly. Hmm? I think I'm falling. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Off the roof? I laughed. Number, I think I'm falling for you. She went still. The kind of still that isn't fear or doubt, but reverence. I kept going. I've always believed in love, or at least I told myself I did. I chased the idea of it in all the wrong places, dressed it in glitter and applause, tried to fit it into boxes it never belonged in. She didn't speak, just watched me, eyes wide, lips slightly parted. But you, I swallowed. You made me believe something else. That maybe the right person doesn't crash into your life like a movie scene. Maybe they arrive quietly, with burnt coffee and a paper cup, with stories about dragon librarians and sky whales, with patience. I looked down at her. Maybe the right person comes when you least expect them and refuses to let you hide from yourself. For a moment, she said nothing, just stared up at me like the world had finally gone quiet around her. Then she whispered, "So what happens now?" I reached down and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Now?" I said. "Now I keep falling. If you'll catch me." She sat up slowly, eyes never leaving mine. Her hand reached for mine, fingers interlocking like they were meant to be there all along. "I've been waiting," she said, "to be someone's reason to stay." And in that moment, under a sky she had renamed with hope, I knew I already was. I always thought love was supposed to look a certain way. Grand gestures, perfect timing, some dramatic arc where everything clicks into place and the world applauds. But this was different, and it was better. Mia wasn't a princess. She didn't wait in a tower or dream of a rescue. She didn't wear silk or sparkle in the sunlight. She wore thrifted hoodies and carried stories in her back pocket instead of glass slippers. And I was no knight. I wasn't brave when it mattered most. I let my ego talk louder than my heart. I made mistakes, big ones. I didn't slay dragons. I was the one who let them grow. But somehow, in spite of it all, we found each other. We didn't build a palace. We built a two-bedroom apartment with uneven floors and a leaky kitchen faucet. The rent was too high and the water pressure too low. But it was ours. Mornings started with burnt toast and shared silence over mismatched mugs. Evenings were spent editing scholarship applications, dancing barefoot in the living room, or lying on the floor with storyboards of Mia's books spread out like treasure maps. There were no fireworks, but there was laughter. There were no glass carriages, but there was a beat-up sedan with one working window, and every road felt like freedom when she was beside me. I watched her bloom, not into someone better, but into someone finally given the space to be fully herself. The same fire, the same wonder, just no longer buried under survival. We still had bad days. We argued about stupid things, like which way the toilet paper should hang, or how many throw pillows counted as reasonable. But even our worst moments never came with doors slamming or silence that stung. Just space, just return. We didn't become something perfect. We became something true. I think people wait too long for the fairy tale. They chase some fantasy where everything is easy, where love is soft and clean and endlessly romantic. But love, real love, is messy. It's showing up tired and choosing each other anyway. It's forgiving fast. It's growing slow. It's whispering, "I'm here," when the world is too loud. And that's not a fairy tale. That's better. That's life. And I wouldn't trade a single page of it. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind of morning that doesn't need music because the rhythm of ordinary life is enough. The drip of the coffee maker, the soft hiss of the kettle, the way sunlight filters through the curtains like it belongs there. Mia sat at the kitchen table, legs folded beneath her, reading over a handwritten story draft. Her hair was in a messy bun, glasses sliding down her nose. One of my old t-shirts hanging off her shoulder like it had always been hers. I stood there for a moment, just watching. There was no spotlight, no stage, no audience. Just this woman, strong, imperfect, whole, and the life we had stitched together thread by thread, choosing each other over and over again in small, quiet ways. And out of nowhere, it hit me. The truth. The truth I hadn't said out loud. Not fully. Not in the way she deserved to hear it. I walked over, sat across from her, and waited until she looked up. When she did, I didn't hesitate. That love I thought I had, I began, voice low, steady, with Vanessa, with all the others. It wasn't love. It was noise. It was illusion. A distraction dressed up as connection. Mia's lips parted slightly, unsure of where I was going. But her eyes stayed steady. I leaned in closer. But you were the real thing. From the first moment, even when I didn't see it, even when I pushed you away, you were the truth buried underneath all my pretending, and you still are. She didn't speak right away, just stared at me like she was studying every crack in my armor, every scar I was no longer trying to hide. Then slowly she smiled. That smile, the one that never asked for anything, yet gave me everything. She reached across the table, placed her hand on mine and whispered, "So are you." There was no dramatic music, no kiss under the rain, just the warm press of her palm, the grounding weight of her presence, and a sense that, for the first time in a long, long time, we were both home. Not in a place, in a person. Love didn't save me. She did. With coffee-stained apologies and dragon stories and brutal honesty. With compassion when I didn't deserve it. With silence when the world was too loud. And with those four quiet words, "So are you." It was the end of a long, chaotic chapter, and the beginning of everything else.